Welcome to the Elevate podcast, brought to you by the Registered Master Builders. Each week we explore the ideas and practices that help us get the best from our businesses, our teams and ourselves. I'm your host, Ryan Castle. We talk to experts, advocates and business owners in the construction industry to share their knowledge, insights and experiences to help you build a better business and enjoy a better life. Now let the business building begin. Terri-Ann and Penny Thomson, welcome along to the Elevate Master Builders podcast. So great to have you both on the show today.
Thank you, Ryan. Lovely to be here.
Now, we're going to be talking about a really quite serious issue going on in construction, and that's the amount of waste we generate as an industry. We'll get into some numbers, and there's some really, really big numbers, and what you two have been working on and how we can help address that is really quite interesting. Maybe before we get into WasteHub, the initiative you've got going, can I get a little bit of background on you both and how you've ended up in this juncture? Maybe Terri-Ann, could we start with you?
Yeah, sure. So my background is very much the science background. I trained as a chemical oceanographer, and then I moved into wastewater and water design. And after completing a master's and PhD in that field, I kind of worked in the water industry in the UK for quite a long time, which I loved, but moved out to New Zealand 20 years ago, moved for 2 years, but ended up staying for 20. And then ended up teaching and researching and really getting involved in what I would call broadly environmental engineering, and in particular really interested and passionate about waste. So yeah, and because I was actually teaching within the civil engineering school, actually looking at construction waste was like a sensible way to start leading research. So yeah.
And Terri-Ann, did you just sort of wake up as a 5-year-old and go, I'd like to be a chemical oceanographer? I mean, most of us do that, right?
No, I love that idea. No, I didn't. I actually woke up as a 5-year-old and said, right, okay, I want to be a dancer. That was my dream. Okay. You know, I don't have many people that wake up and go, I want to be an oceanographer. But anyway, but that didn't quite pan out. So no, I've always been quite obsessed with the ocean. I love being in the water. I love associating with the water. I love, water, life in the water. So for me, once I'd done chemistry, which I really enjoyed at school, I knew that I wanted to do something with that chemistry field, but with just something a little bit different. And oceanography just sang to me at the time. And I would have cheerfully stayed in that field, but there really weren't very many jobs.
Okay. And is the dance dream, is it still alive? Is there still a secondary career in dance, do we think?
I do Zumba pretty badly, and I love every minute, and that's fine by me.
Brilliant. That's outstanding. Penny, let's bring you into the conversation. Let us hear a little bit about your background.
Yes, well, I come at EIC from a different point of view. I'm a designer and a research manager. I have a really broad background. I have an MBA. I've worked in advertising and film, and I've been a design lecturer. So I met Terri-Ann in the research office at Unitec, and we ended up working together. And I'm really interested in design from the point of view of accessibility and communication, and also appeal of information. And I found this sector really interesting because of my broad background. I think I found a lot of the sustainability information quite cluttered. It's quite a sort of complex landscape in terms of the information out there, and it can be quite overwhelming. So I approach problems from a sort of visual language point of view, visual cues, and I think that's why it's been such a good partnership with Terri-Ann with the scientific background and the ways to really clearly communicate it. So yeah, that's a bit of my background. I'm in Wanaka at the moment, so doing quite a bit of skiing, and really enjoying the community here as they are so sort of engaged with sustainability, how to manage the future, the resilience of food supply, for example, sustainability. So all of that is very strong in this community, and they seem to be a really great template for what we could do in New Zealand using our own New Zealand approach to these problems. So, yeah, that's a bit about me.
Thanks, Penny. And so is your X Games dream still alive? You're in Wanaka skiing, you're working on your triple backflip?
No, although I did a couple of jumps on the weekend.
Good job. I'm always wildly ashamed when I see I snowboard. When I see my snowboard videos, I do jumps, and I feel like I'm sailing through the air at like 100 meters off the ground. And
Oh,
turns out it was only like 5 centimeters, but
right.
it felt impressive at the time.
I was the same, but any air is good air for me.
Indeed.
So yeah, no. But
Alrighty. Let's talk about waste in the New Zealand construction sector. The number I've seen is that the sector produces around 72,000 tonnes of waste a year. And I really liked one of the analogies that it gave was like filling 260 Olympic swimming pools. Like if you picture those swimming pools are ginormous, and then you 260 of them end on end, and that's what our industry's predominantly, I guess, going to landfill. Could one of you kind of like pick up the insights of the data? Maybe Terri-Ann, this is a good data question for you. Talk to us a bit about this waste and just like what impact is this having for us on our landfills and on our environment.
I love the way you feed it to the geek first. That's absolutely fine by me. Yeah, look, I mean, recent data looking at the amount of waste that's come in specifically from construction indicates that about 70%, just under 70% of all the waste to landfill comes from that construction sector. And that is huge, as you said before. And Penny's worked really hard on getting some sort of ways of visualizing what that really looks like. And I think that really helps. The problem we've got is that actually waste disposal in New Zealand is relatively inexpensive when you compare it globally. So our waste levy is currently $70 per tonne, and that's in Class 1 landfill. Whereas if you look around the world, they're vastly different, especially in the UK where it's ridiculously high. So it's not particularly expensive to throw waste away. It is it's what we've done for a really long time. Construction waste has gone to landfill. The great news is that we are seeing change, and there are lots of passionate people who are interested in making change here in this space. One of the areas that we're particularly fascinated in, and the reason we've spent the last 10 years or so on construction sites in the skip, putting out material and auditing what's there and analysing what we can find, because we're keen to see what sorts of materials are getting thrown away. And then in looking at, well, how could this potentially be reused or recycled, or even better, could we cut it off at the front end? Is it something that's completely unnecessary, like a type of packaging? One thing we have found is that plastic is particularly problematic because it's incredibly high volume, but it doesn't weigh very much. So when you throw it in your skip, it's not really adding to the mass of the skip, and it's not really significantly contributing to any of those charges associated with waste disposal. So as a consequence, plastic tends to be, it's just too easy. It's like in your household, when you put stuff in the bin, it kind of disappears. And I think, unfortunately, that's something that we need to rethink. But to rethink that, we need the infrastructure around to be able to assist us to think about it in a different way and think about this as a resource rather than a waste that we throw away and forget about. So yeah, there's lots of different reasons why we should change our attitude to waste. And although for us, a lot of it's around environmental sustainability, we like the idea of protecting our planet for future generations. There's another really simple reason, and that is that it can save you money. And so why waste good resources that might be saving you money? From a business sense, this is really important. And we can talk a bit more later on about what those cost savings might look like. And I'm going to be honest with you, at the moment, there's not much to be saved. But in the future, if we can develop our infrastructure, then the savings are there to be taken. And I think that's quite exciting.
Okay. Thank you, Terri. And maybe, Penny, if you could tell us about WasteHub. What is WasteHub? How have you decided to bring this together? How do we think it's going to serve our industry?
Well, the WasteHub came from the opportunity to work on a large plastic innovation fund project, and that was with Marley Brands and Waste Management New Zealand. So that was to do with that infrastructure question that Terri-Ann was talking about. How do we develop infrastructure? So that was to collect and recycle PVC and HDPE construction plastics in the form of pipes, working with Marley, and recycling them into new products. And our big question was, how do we educate builders and get supply of the pipes from site to Marley? So it was about creating those links. So initially we were going to create a sort of education toolkit to talk to builders, and that was easy to use, to provide clear messaging with what we could do with waste on site. And quickly we developed that toolkit idea into a free website portal, like a central place to find information to support the plastic recycling, to sort of combat that very complex information landscape out there. So like a one-stop shop, you just go onto WasteHub, you can find everything you need to know about waste and about minimising your waste. And that's what we ended up putting on our website. That's our sort of key tagline. So we knew about this need because of our experience with plastic auditing. We were aware that it was just super hard to find information, and builders are busy people, and we just wanted to make it really easy to find. So so that's where we started. We made it a one-stop shop for all things waste, and that includes asbestos. It's a website that could grow, and we also envisage it could support local initiatives via councils. So it's still it's still got lots of potential, I guess, to partner, and it's gone beyond just pipes, and it's gone to other waste streams as well. And we've had lots of great feedback on it, and it's definitely got so much potential for the future as a resource to help us build support infrastructure, but also create behaviour change on site.
So the actual address is wastehub.co.nz, and we'll make sure we put that in the show notes so that our community can reach it and find it easily.
Yes.
What's the vision for how a construction company might use WasteHub? Are there tools there that they would use when they're planning a project before the construction even gets started? Is it something that they're like, we're mid-project, we've got a site cleanup we need to do, can someone go and get some resources? Like, at what stage of the building process might they interact with WasteHub?
Well, really, it's best to set up waste minimisation on site before you start, if possible, or you could do it through the build, but really WasteHub just provides all those resources. So there's how-to videos, there's a plastic waste catalogue, so you can identify what plastics you have on site. There's a recycling services finder, which you can put in your region, and then you can put in the plastic that you have on site, and you can find out where your local recyclers are. There's waste information. There's a gallery to show you other sites that have been set up. There's an asbestos page, and we also hope to work with local councils in the future. But if I was coming in on a Monday morning and I was like, right, what do I need to do? The first thing I would do would be to click the button. There's 8 buttons on there that says how to set up your site. So I'd go on, I'd say, right, I've got a bunch of polystyrene. I'd identify that polystyrene from the waste catalogue, because there are things that can and cannot be recycled in certain types of plastic. The second question I would ask, and this is all in the how to set up your site button, will the supplier take it back? There are some really good supplier take-back schemes available, so it's good to know if the supplier will take it back. That's a really easy fix. Then the third question would be, is there a local recycler? You can order, fourthly, you can order bags and signs, and then you can also educate your team. There's lots of information on there as well. So hopefully that covers where you'd start.
Thanks. That's great. Terri-Ann, you mentioned earlier that you'd spent lots of time on site digging through skips. I sort of had this picture of you creeping onto construction sites in the middle of the night and with your headlamp piling through a skip. I'm sure it wasn't quite that covert. But what have you observed? Like, what are the biggest mistakes? And maybe they're not intentional mistakes, but what are you observing that are most common things that construction sites could be doing differently?
Yeah, I mean, look, nothing so exciting as going on at night. There's nothing more glamorous though than standing in a skip and throwing waste out. I can tell you that much. So yeah, there's a few things that I think are important. I think having full on-site engagement, and not just with your own team, but also with your subcontractors that are coming on and off, is really, really important. Because if you do go down the route of saying, okay, we are going to set up some separate areas to collect particular waste types, because we know that there's either a take-back scheme or we know that we can have reuse or recycling. If you're going to do that, making sure that you have someone who is your designated waste leader. Now, that does not mean that person spends his whole time just being a waste leader. That's not how it works. Sites are busy and expensive. But somebody who just can go and have a look at the end of the day and say, hey, this is in the right place, this isn't. Remind people occasionally, hey, put it in the right bin. So a waste leader is super important, as is a waste plan, because knowing what waste is coming and when it's coming is also really important part of this. And we actually have toolbox talks for you on WasteHub, where you can look at, well, what should I be talking to my team about when we're laying the foundations? And what should we be expecting in terms of waste when we're putting the structure up? So having a plan and knowing what you're likely to receive is super important. Now, connecting with subcontractors again, remember that they've got a role on site and they might not necessarily be on board with what you're doing. And we have found some really interesting things in the skip. We once found a $300 roll of brand new vinyl flooring that unfortunately they didn't need it, and it was actually more hassle to take it back, so it just ended up in the skip. It was still in its wrapper, and we were like, whoa. So that kind of thing happens if I think everybody is not all bought into the idea that we are going to target waste. Have a waste target. Communicate that waste target. Tell each other how well you're doing. If you make any big wins or you save money, give a shout out. Do a lunch. Do a morning tea, or really engage with the team and encourage the team. And what you'll find is that the more engaged you are, the easier it becomes, because it actually isn't necessarily time consuming. It just needs everybody to be aware of it. It needs everybody to care enough to say, I'm going to put this piece of timber in the right bin rather than just throwing it near the biggest skip that's there. The other thing that we've really found about having that on-site separation of waste is that it tends to make your site much cleaner and tidier, because you've actually got a place for everything. And lots of the construction companies we've worked with have come back and said to us, this was really unexpected. We didn't expect the site to be so tidy. So in terms of health and safety, you've got another win here. And for those people out there thinking, well, we have tiny sites, how can we fit it all in? Have a look at our site set up images, because you can see everything from great big sites that are, where they're building, 60 apartment blocks and they've got space, to one house build where they've still managed to find a way to separate waste out in a really quite innovative but simple way. So that they're the things that we've really observed when we've been on site.
Okay. You mentioned earlier, and something that I think always pricks up the ears of our construction company owners, is you can actually save money by doing this. I don't know, who of you is best placed to maybe mention some of the ways that this can increase, either help with cost savings or add to the dollar bottom line?
Well, I reckon we can both have a go at that, but I'm happy to start with that. So there's a few things. We're really, really big on understanding what your waste flow is. It may well be that you identify somewhere where actually perhaps you've over-ordered in certain places, or, just by looking at your QS system, you might be able to make some savings there. Perhaps you're wasting something that you're not aware of. It does happen. Being able to go back to your suppliers and say, hey, actually, is it really necessary to provide this in packaging? Do I really need this component? Being able to go back and do that means you generate less waste. And by generating less waste, obviously, you're filling less skips. And again, that's another cost saving and another cost benefit to you. Now, again, I don't want to pull wool over anybody's eyes and say, hey, you're going to save millions doing it this way, because that's not the truth. You can make some savings, but there's also a cost associated with sustainable waste management at the moment. And that's because our infrastructure isn't developed, especially nationwide, to be able to manage it in a more sustainable way. But just to give you an idea of numbers, we ran a study in 2021 from a new build construction site, and it was an 8-lot terraced housing site. And we looked at, if we managed this sustainable, and that was separating out all of the waste and taking it back to giving it for reuse or recycling, what did that look like? And it actually ended up being about $20,000, which was 0.6% of the total project cost. Now, we also estimated what business as usual waste management would look like. And at the time, it was about 9,000. So we're talking about 11,000 different. We're also talking about 8 homes. So for each home, that's actually putting on about $1,400. So the client essentially, if that was passed on, would be paying an extra $1,400, which represents 0.16% of the house's value. So yes, I understand it's still an increase, and it's an increase when we're all, tightening our purse strings, but it's not a massive increase. It's not immense. And there are clients out there who believe enough in sustainability that I think would appreciate knowing that just making these little changes isn't substantially changing the cost of the house build. Of course, those waste management costs will totally vary by region and with the site owner. But generally, the site owner we work with in this study thought the costs were actually quite reasonable. And they got 84% waste reduction, waste diversion from landfill, which 84% by weight, which is huge.
Okay. Penny, I'll come to you to maybe add into that in just a moment. Certainly the thought that occurred to me, our construction company owners are always looking for how they can differentiate their business compared to others. I think as a broad economy, we're now seeing a lot of consumer participation and making selections from who they purchase, and are you doing good for the environment? Are you not? So I think this is certainly a double win potentially for the construction company that can actually differentiate themselves in market by saying they have a smart approach to waste management and how they're dealing with it and doing the best things, and then also getting better outcomes on site. So it feels like there is an opportunity for a win-win there. And yes, there is some additional cost, but it's, as you're saying, in the scheme of a build, it's pretty marginal. Penny, is there anything else you'd like to add in on that element?
Well, I think with the rising cost of materials and, the pressure that construction industry is under, I think it's starting to see waste as a resource, and it's about recovering a resource rather than seeing it as a waste. So it's like a reframing of what waste is and the importance of designing it out in the first place, but also managing the waste that does occur and acknowledging that waste, when you put it in the skip, it's going to landfill. It is your problem if it's your waste. So I think it's taking responsibility for that waste. And as you say, quite rightly, it's a real credit it is a real competitive advantage to have some kind of structure and system in place to manage your waste. So that's just what I'd like to add.
Thank you. And we see a lot of the term greenwashing, which is people maybe pretending to be more green than they are. Would I be right in thinking that WasteHub gives construction companies actually the right types of resources to make sure they're doing things correctly, not just putting a sticker on the side of the bin saying that they're recycling?
Yes, that's right. Sorry, you go.
Sorry. Yeah, that's actually a real tricky one. But we do have a whole series of blogs on there, and if you have a look, there is one specifically on greenwashing. We do try and sort of give simple advice, and it is an incredibly complicated landscape to try and avoid greenwashing. But we give some really easy things to follow that push you in the right direction. And with our recyclers, of course, we can't check every single one on the list. It's not possible because they're nationwide. But very many, we've actually been to their factory and said, hey, can we have a look at what you're doing and how you're doing it? Just to sort of validate that, the right things are going ahead and the right things are happening. So, I think that the greenwashing advice is there. We do say, hey, look, if you can get a local recycling solution, aim for that if possible. That's really important. Try not to get too confused by the difference between terms like compostable and biodegradable. And there's actually information on WasteHub about that and what they mean and how they impact your choices and decisions that you make in your area. I think it's really important with greenwashing as well to understand that a really great sustainable solution in one area of New Zealand might not be the best option in another area. So that regional aspect is super important. And again, some of that's covered in the WasteHub. But we always say to people, look, we're happy for you to reach out to us. We're happy for you to send messages to WasteHub. And we do get quite a lot, and it's really lovely, where people say, oh, could you tell us this, or could you add this? And we really welcome that. Please help us make this richer and make it as good as it can be.
Right. And Penny, you're about to add something called Circular Path. Can you tell us what that's about?
Yes, and I think this is in reaction to this need for a verified, certified kind of seal, if you like, or proof that you have actually done an audited, proper job of setting up your site for waste minimisation. So, yes, Circular Path is New Zealand Waste certification. It launches late 2026, so we're working on it right now. It's currently a website. It starts with plastics like WasteHub, but it will evolve into other resources as well. The basic system is it provides practical tools and support to manage your waste on site, and it's scalable, supports businesses of all sizes. We thought that was very important to have it appropriate to our New Zealand construction industry. It's independent and it builds credibility and supports more circular construction. So we're interested in promoting better habits, behaviour change, reducing landfill and improving resource efficiency. And just using our New Zealand practical kind of approach to how we manage our waste on site. But I think it's going to be a really excellent tool for businesses, especially small businesses, to build their credibility in that sector with customers, clients, stakeholders.
Okay.
So,
So is there a link from WasteHub to Circular Path, or do people go through it?
There will be, and what will happen is we'll have links on Circular Path, toolbox talks, a waste management plan. That all becomes part of what the package is, as well as a support. And sites will be audited from time to time. But it's in development at the moment, and we're just beta testing it now.
Okay.
So
sounds like an awesome initiative.
Yeah.
Can I?
Go ahead, Terri.
Right. Am I allowed to just add something about Circular Path, if that's okay? Yeah. I just wanted to add that with Circular Path, the idea behind that is that you will actually have a badge, a logo that you can use, and that will show your clients that actually you have been sustainably managing your plastic waste from construction. And the way we'll do that is we'll support you to do your your waste management plan. We kind of hope that if you can do a good one for plastics, that will eventually expand to all the other waste types, but we'll start small. And then we look at the options available for you to actually reduce, reuse, or recycle your plastic waste. And then you need to demonstrate that to us. So you demonstrate it by giving us evidence that you've done that on site. And as Penny said, we reserve the right to drop into site and check that it is actually happening. And after a year, if you've demonstrated that you're meeting a particular standard, then you'll get the certification, which you can show your clients. But I think what's unique about this is that standard, we haven't made it the same across the country, because as I mentioned before, it absolutely wouldn't be fair, because the options for reuse and recycling in the lower south are completely different to what you'd find in Auckland. So it's basically set at a level that's appropriate for what's available in your area. And then the next year, we ask you to improve on that up until the point where you've pretty much exhausted what's available in your area. And then we just ask for evidence that you're maintaining it. And that is what we use to be able to provide validation that you've met the criteria. And then you can say to your clients, hey, look, I'm doing everything I can do in my area to maintain and sustainably manage my waste.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'd like to round us out with two questions. One's maybe at the large scale end and one's at the small scale. I think my large scale question is part of this is dependent on infrastructure provided by commercial waste recycling and governments and councils and the like. So what would be one change you'd like to see or one piece of infrastructure you'd like to see implemented that would really, really help? And I understand you might need to choose a particular city as a reference point, given that they differentiate. And then my second question, which would be around, what's the very first step that a small, medium construction company could take next week to start on this path? So who wants to take the infrastructure question?
Can I take the infrastructure piece? Okay, Penny, can I take that one?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Because I think Penny will know better about the path to take, having spent so much of her time working on WasteHub. In terms of the infrastructure, for me personally, I think one of the biggest issues we've got is actually around transportation and how we get our waste from site to the reuse or the recycler or wherever it's going to be. That is incredibly problematic. So rather than just setting up 100 different recycling venues all over the country, we've got some really great recycling factories. Marley's a good example of that. They've got two, one in the North Island, one in the South. The question is, how do you get your waste there? So I think for me, it would be focusing on how we can make that transportation accessible, affordable, and sustainable to get those materials where they need to be so that they don't end up in landfill. And at the moment, from working on many different sites, that's probably the biggest issue. It's been around, well, I've got my waste, I've separated my waste, it's in the right condition, I've kept it clean and dry, I know where it needs to go. How the heck am I going to get it there? And if everyone is driving one bag of waste out a long way to a recycler, are we really actually achieving anything, or are we going backwards here a little bit in terms of carbon emissions? So I think we need to be thinking about how we do this in our long, thin country. How do we get this to work?
And do you have the answer to that, Terri-Ann? Is it about some kind of like hub and spoke kind of setup for these recycling centres where you have smaller collection points that are close to drop off and then that gets transported to a larger location?
Absolutely. It's funny you should say that because we're just about to hopefully trial that. So it's in its infancy, but we've just applied for some funding to be able to look at that. And it is totally like that hub and spoke, and actually making the most of using Kiwi Rail as well for some of our bulk transportation, because it's much lower in terms of carbon emissions. It can move masses of material. So that kind of approach, we're looking at maybe trialing that down in the South Island, at Lower South. And I think that would be an amazing pilot to run. What does it look like? What are the fish hooks? What are the overall costs? And are we actually getting an outcome that's actually better? And we don't know that till we try, but I think that would be one thing that we need to do in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Penny, what should the construction company owner listening to this, what should they do next week?
Well, I would start with one waste stream. If you say have a whole lot of polystyrene on site, go onto WasteHub, identify it, go onto the recycling finder, put in your region, find where the recyclers are, set up a bag. There's free downloadable signs, there's places to buy bags, and start with that one waste stream. And then as you go through the build, maybe you're finding you've got other waste streams and you can set those up as well. I think that's a good place to start. Start looking around WasteHub, see what information's on there, and then just start building on site a series of bags. And and then you'll see some real gains, and it feels good to manage your waste and not to see it flying all over the site with polystyrene. So I think that would be my key advice: is just make a start.
Right.
Do something.
Once they've got that first waste stream underway, you guys come on site and shout morning tea. Is that what I heard?
We've done pies.
We have done, and we love taking things that we used to start with beers, but we got told off for that. So now we make it pies, and we love going on and shouting out pies, absolutely. And if there's groups out there that they want to talk about what they're doing and show us they send us pictures, we will put them up on WasteHub and celebrate their wins and their successes, because this is about builders being able to share with other builders and having that conversation. Maybe they can support each other. Maybe my transportation dream is actually that, a group of builders in the same proximity might share the load of moving waste around. doing things together. And I know it's a competitive industry, I understand that, but I think that this is a common aim for everybody. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
And give us some feedback if you find something hard to find, or it doesn't work for you, or there's a mechanism on there to email us and let us know, because really it's for builders, it's for the industry. So any feedback would be super welcome. Yeah.
Great. Here's my idea, which you may have already thought of, is that you've got all the hardware suppliers delivering with full trucks out to the sites, dropping off materials. Surely they make sense as a way to be a collection point and bring them back to their hubs and then connect from there. Got that one? Yes. You guys are all over it.
The only issue that you have with that, and again, I think it is one of those things that could develop into something fabulous and it would work really well. But at this stage, I think we need to improve what that separation looks like, because one of the issues we have had, and that's why it's really important to watch the videos on WasteHub if you're going to do this, is by keeping your stream clean, uncontaminated, and just one particular source, when it goes to the recycler, it will just get recycled. Now, if you send, let's say, a batch of pipes back and there's some soft plastics in there, the recyclers don't have time to sort through the stuff that's in the wrong place. So the whole lot ends up going to landfill often. And so for some of the big suppliers, they may well end up with the nightmare of a whole load of mixed waste, and they don't know where it's come from, and then who pays the landfill charges. So it's actually more complicated than it sounds. But I think if we can get people really interested in doing some on-site waste management and getting real improvement in the cleanliness and the waste stream separation, then maybe that's something for the future. And certainly, some of the suppliers have been really keen to coordinate with us, and Mitre 10 helped us with the videos, produce the videos. So, there's interest there, but I think it's also, there's lots of fish hooks in that space, unfortunately.
I can hear my dad's voice, who actually happened to be a construction company owner. But if you're going to do a job, do it properly. So if you're going to dig into recycling on site and doing a better job of your waste management, do it properly on site, and it makes it easier from there.
Oh, yeah.
Penny and Terri-Ann, thank you so much for firstly joining us on the podcast today to enlighten us. Thank you so much for the work you're doing around WasteHub, and I think it almost feels like a bit of a new frontier in terms of what's going to happen, and it's only going to get more of a requirement. I could certainly see legislation coming in at times that is going to require these kind of things in the future. So get ahead of the game, get good at doing it now, exactly. And most things won't be such a shock. So. Great job, great work, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you so much, Ryan.